Greetings, awesome crew of Waste Not Warriors! I'm Mandy Wildman, and today we're going to talk about how to make a duster, vest, kimono, or lightweight coat, whatever you want to call it. I've made about 1,050,000 of these, and all you need is a top and a skirt. I used a cool but very stained embroidered tablecloth and this roughly thrifted shirt. So first, you'll need to measure how long you want the duster to be. I like a high waist, so I picked a spot just under the bust and I marked it with pins. Then I went to my work table and I marked it with a pencil and cut it, adding about half an inch or so for the seam allowance. Next, I folded the oval-shaped tablecloth in half lengthwise, and I estimated how long I wanted it to fall at the back. Cutting something as big as this is tricky, so use any lines you possibly can to get it as accurate as possible. Now with a regular skirt, all you have to do is cut off the waistband and cut it open down the front. Let's take a moment to admire the teeny tiny hand stitching on this piece. It's a little bit tragic that it's so stained, but I have a fix for that which I'll show you later. Fold your skirt piece in half and then half again, and make marks at each fold that will help guide you as you're pinning it to your top. Next, using the widest stitch on my machine, I gathered the skirt to match the width of my top and I pinned them both together. Sew the skirt to the top. You can sew it twice for some extra security. See this? This is a piece of bias binding that some sweet sewist from yesteryear made a note of its length so that I could use it today. I'm grateful. I'm going to use this bias binding around the waist seam. It'll serve two purposes: hide the seam and create a channel for a waist tie. Cool! I placed one side of the bias binding up against the waist seam that I just trimmed, and then I sewed very close to the edge along that line there all the way around the waist, turning in a small hem on each end. Then I folded the other side of the binding over the raw edges of the seam, and I top stitched it down, creating a channel for the waist tie. I used a narrow cotton twill tape like this. Using a safety pin, I threaded the tape through the waist channel. I like a cinched waist. Next, I ransacked my stash for an old doily I could zigzag stitch onto the back. I found a big length of messy vintage lace to sew around the edge of the skirt. I wanted it ruffled, so I used my wide stitch again and I just went for it. So this flopsy-mopsy collar was killing me. I had to do something with this ruffly front collar that kept flopping over. The 3 layers just didn't want to lay flat, so I decided to nail them down with an embellishment, in this case a vintage handkerchief. I cut 2 sides off the hanky and top stitched them down. Oh, I love how it turned out. Next, for some pocketses. I wanted to make them curved to echo the sort of oval curve of the tablecloth and at the front of the top. Do you see that? I found some vintage linens that matched, and I used those, doubling them over and then stitching them together for sturdiness. Amazingly, the scraps from the hanky were just enough to add a strip of edging to each pocket. I love it when that happens. Place the pockets where you want them, evening them up with your tape measure, and then pin them in place and sew them on. Hey, we're almost done! Or are we? Remember I said I had a solution for the stains? As sad as it may seem to cover up all these beautiful pastel colors, the stains were just too noticeable for me to live with. I decided it had to be dyed. I chose tan because it would disguise the stains without obliterating the original variations of color. I dyed it on the stove top, adding a cup of salt to the hot water, and then I put in the freshly washed and wet creation and stirred frequently for about 15 to 20 minutes. A thorough rinse in cold water and then onto the line to dry. Ooh, I love the way it turned out, all faded and glorious. I named her the miner's wife. See how easy that was? You can do that. Oh, yes, you can. Hey, do you have any questions? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for keeping me company today. See you next time.